Update to the Rory Gilmore Book Challenge. I am currently reading Mark Twain's The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Um, this is a book that originally I had thought that I was going to get through rather quickly, and that's just not the case with this book. I decided to take my time a little bit more with this book to really read and understand. There were a lot of words in it that I didn't understand the definitions to, and um, so I stopped and paused and looked those up just so I could get the full benefit of the book. So there are a total of 36 chapters in this book. I read the first 18, and the premise of the book. So there's this boy, he lives in a small town on the Mississippi River, and he goes on adventures with his friends, Huckleberry Finn and Joe Harper. And one of the things that I love about this book is the main character, Tom Sawyer. He actually reminds me a little bit of my brother Daniel, and he is very intelligent. He's hilarious. He's clever, but he also gets in a bit of mischief. And there's just a lot of like funny parts to this book. A couple parts that stand out to me as being the most memorable. So there's the scene where he gets into trouble and his Aunt Polly wants him to whitewash the fence. And he wants to go play with his friends because it's a Saturday and he was in school all week. And so he ends up like coming up with this scheme to make it seem like it's not work. It's something really fun to do and everybody should want to do it. And so he ends up not only getting the boys in the neighborhood to do it for him, but they end up having to pay him for the privilege of doing his job for him. And then, of course, he goes off and has fun and adventures. And so that's just one example of, he's very clever. Another, not a funny scene, but another like big part of this book is he is at a graveyard with his friend Huckleberry Finn, and they end up witnessing a murder. And the murderer ends up, framing and setting up the town drunk. And they are the only ones that were there that know the truth of what really happened. And so they're really struggling if they do the right thing, if they say something about it, because this guy is quite dangerous and they're afraid of him. So that's a big part of this story is the witness to this murder. Um, and then another memorable part that's in the first half of the book that I read, they end up running away. So Tom Sawyer, his friend Joe Harper, and then Huckleberry Finn, they end up running away for about a week. And in that time, everybody presumes that they're dead. And he comes home for a brief period of time and learns that if their bodies are not found, that they're going to be a funeral for them. And so he makes a plan to attend his own funeral because he wants to hear, like what people have to say about him. And so they stay out and they come in, they sneak into their own funeral and they hear what everybody has to say to them or say about them. And then, of course, during the service, they end up crashing the funeral and everybody's shocked. And so, the big moral of that is that, say things to people while they're still alive. If you love somebody, if they mean something to you, say something to them now. Because unfortunately, they're not going to crash their own funeral. Things like that just don't really happen in real life. And so they're not going to have that chance to hear it. And so if you care about them, say it now. So another reason why this book took me so long to get through is I kept, going on, I'd see like an interesting topic that I wanted to learn more about. And one of them was like patent medicines of the 1800s. So there's a lot of like superstitions that are in this book that actually were real superstitions of people at the time. So just weird ways to cure various ailments. And I was interested in how that worked back then. And there were a lot of hoaxes and frauds regarding patent medications. There was like snake oil, um, various drugs, which are now, today illicit drugs, heroin and cocaine. Those were being marketed as cures as well. And so that was just interesting. And, it's kind of something that we still deal with to this day. So it's a little bit more regulated than it is today, but we still have to deal with false advertising and things like that. So that was kind of interesting. Another like wild tangent that I went off on. So there's a scene when they're running away where they catch turtle eggs and they eat the turtle eggs. And I don't know why, but I was curious about that. So I looked that up. And actually, that is very illegal to do nowadays. So sea turtles are considered an endangered species, and eating their eggs is actually illegal. So there's, some countries where they still kind of do it anyways. But it just looked rather disgusting. It's not something that I would ever want to try myself, but I was curious about it. And so the last part, I guess, about this book is it seems like very lighthearted on the surface. But there's, like this other side to Tom Sawyer, a side that just wants everybody to love him and care about him. And it causes him to show off and do these things because he's not really quite sure how he's supposed to act. And he's still learning, he's still growing. So I'm going to go ahead and get through the last half of the book, so chapters 19 through 36. And then I'll give another update then.